Welcome to my library, dear guest. My name is Cole, and I will be your storyteller. Today, the story we will have a look at is a four-parter. A story where red flags were missed, that guys continue to be that guys, and DMs openly display kinks and fetishes. Judging by that last point, you could probably figure that this story will include NSFW topics. You have been warned. That all being said, let's start with the story. Mutants and Mega Mistakes, Volume 1. By the author, Wonderful Voice 4999. This is one of many stories about my introductions to mutants and masterminds, or M&M. A horror story that seemed to take forever to end. It started when I met someone on my way to play D&D at my local comic shop. I had started up a conversation and along the way mentioned how I was looking to expand my horizons in tabletop RPGs. He mentioned he had a group he played with and offered to let me join. I took him up on it and we exchanged Discord information. I'm going to call him TG for the rest of the story. Fast forward about a month and I've just started college. I got an invite from TG to a Mutants and Mastermind server. I join in and am almost immediately put off. It's a play-by-post server. I, at that point, never really enjoyed play-by-post. They always made it feel like the plot of whatever game was being played was never moving. But after I hopped onto VC and talked to one of the DMs who I'm going to call PD, I was assured that it would be fun, and it wasn't only play-by-post. They did actually play via Roll20. So, not really having any other options and thinking it would still be a good chance to learn the system despite everything, I stayed. The server had problems. I recognized this after my first week. The biggest problem was that the owner of the server, the main DM who I'll call John, would always complain about other DMs doing things that went against the lore of his world. A lore that none of us knew except him. On top of that, the other DMs wouldn't have to step up if he would DM like he set out to do in the first place. This also led to the other two DMs stepping on each other's toes when making stories and maps and events we had to deal with. The one who wasn't just bad as a DM, but also as a player, was someone I'm going to call Rabbit, who had an illegal player character that could breathe and do damage to an enemy. I'm not even exaggerating, that is something they literally do mechanically. They were stronger than Superman and Dr. Fate combined, and the son of a god. So between the bickering between the three GMs, Rabbit would have a dick measuring contest with their PC and TG's PC, which was basically the love child of Joker and Elastic Man. In the play-by-post, there was no progression of plot like I had feared, and nothing but melodrama. One of the players eventually started playing a reskinned Crystal Gem from Steven Universe in a very blatant way that kinda took me out of the immersion of it, in all honesty. After about a month of melodrama, main character syndrome, whining DMs, and going nowhere, Rabbit had apparently gotten sick and tired of the server. It was their turn to DM, and they set up an encounter with at least 20 robots that none of our attacks could affect too well. The encounter was unbalanced, and when they realized this with their illegally overpowered PC, they nuked the building and we were killed, as well as the campaign. Rabbit then went off on the whole server. My character was bland and poorly made, which was true, because I was new and no one was really helping me. TG was a dick measuring that guy, which was also true, but so were they. PD needed to grow some balls and take over the fucking story or something, and John was a lazy piece of shit who needed to get his act together and stop whining every 3 seconds about problem he's doing nothing to help fix. Then they left a voice call. John, not able to take such harsh criticism, deleted the server, which left everyone confused or angry, but overall gameless. TG decides that he'll be the DM. He invites me, PD, and Rabbit to a Heroes vs. Villains game. Another play-by-post. And this is where the real horror story begins. TLDR. I get invited to an M&M server where the DMs step on each other's toes and bicker, and the story never moves forward. Only for one of the DMs to criticize everyone and make another DM delete the server. I know I say this a lot, but why do people not leave or openly talk about their issues when confronted with behavior like this? I do understand people's wishes to keep playing, but if there are this many red flags and people being openly hostile to you and going off by the end of it, would you really join the next game with them? The author does say they didn't know that Rabbit and PD would be joining, but I must say I would have been hesitant and asked if they were to join the next game in their stead. Then again, I don't want to blame them for the situation at hand, obviously. Sometimes your hunger for TTRPGs is so great it clouds your judgment. And I suppose that's why the story continues. Mutants and Mega Mistakes. Volume 2. The Good, the Bad, and the Condescending. Let's start with introductions. TG, that guy and that DM. PD, a victim who honestly got the brunt of this, was in the last story. Rabbit was also in the last story, played a villain. Lizard, one of the new guys, played a generic mercenary type, stumbled his way into the center of attention. Blue, emo, also new and appears in other stories. Wolf, doesn't do much, but things revolve around him. Played a Namor-like character and then a wolf boy, ooh twink anime boy, later. And last but not least, Deer. I'll get to her. Before I had joined, I had no idea the other two, PD and Rabbit, would be joining as well. When I did eventually see them in the server we were in, I saw that they weren't the DM at the time, and they were in separate groups. So any bad feelings I would have had about this game I threw under the rug. This is something I would constantly do, and throughout the story or saga, it would bite me in the fucking ass. The game TG was gonna run was played half play-by-post and half real-time play on a Discord server. It was a Heroes vs. Villains campaign, where some players, including myself, PD, Wolf, and Deer, would be heroes, and others, Blue, Lizard, TG, and Rabbit, would be villains. Every few games we'd have a crossover event. This seemed fine at first. In the beginning, he tried to help us new players, which still kinda included me because I didn't know how to build a character worth shit, as well as PD, which kinda explains his DMing. On top of that, he had clearly put a lot of thought into his world. He had a channel for every important spot on the planet, which was nearing up to about 30 or so by the time I had left the server. He had very extensive lore and some decent NPCs. I honestly thought this was going to be great. Problem? Every NPC was a DMPC. It started subtly. Very subtly. Me and PD are rookies doing simulations in the totally not Justice League space station. This is our first session. My character and PD's character do not work as we wanted them to. We're given a hostage situation, and 1 out of 5 of the simulated hostages survives. We are then berated both in and out of character by this world's Superman about how bad we are. I thought to myself that it's not a problem, we made a mistake and the DM is trying to help us do better. Until it keeps happening. Over and over and over. Even if we win an encounter, we are berated in and out of character. Looking back at the encounters, I found that almost all the scenarios were nay unbeatable, especially by our specific party of heroes at the time. First scenario with the simulation, the hostages had the guns pressed against the back of their skulls. With the broken characters we had, it was lucky we even saved one. Second scenario, the giant man-baby that weighed several million tons. None of our attacks worked. Our only option was to put him to sleep. Third scenario, another hostage situation. This time, the bad guy has superpowers. We got punished for making noise when Wolf's whole character is based on sound. One of the training missions got weird with TG using a simulation of a villain NPC to fight us. And it was getting pretty weird as he was making inappropriate comments about Deer's character's thighs. When we expressed disgust, he tried a bit too hard to argue his villain character's morals. And the trend went on. After every fight, we'd go back and give a mission report to whoever ushered out the mission, and we got told that we did wrong. Because that character could have done it way better. Of course, when asked why they didn't do it, the answer was, "I'm an S-class hero. There are more important things to do." Essentially, every combat was a slog, and every time we ran into the villain group, we'd lose outright. Because not only was he a player in the villain group, but the whole villain group was full of veterans. Not only that, but me, PD, and Wolf didn't take Cypher. Basically an ability that helps keep your secret identity a secret. So after our first encounter, anything we wanted secret about our characters was just out there to the villain's highest bidder. When I talked about this to TG, he basically said it was my fault for not taking Cypher. This guy introduced me to the game. He knew I was new and even wanted to help me choose what I needed for my character. I mentioned several times that he works to keep his identity a secret. Not once did he mention taking Cypher or why I would need it. That never came into play though. Thankfully, Lizard's character ended up stumbling into a redemption arc, and Blue wanted to keep it to deter us from going after him again. The world was kinda interesting, but I'd had a little too much going on. He was wishy-washy on if his heroes were the actual good guys, painting them as morally grey, but then defending them anytime someone says something bad about them. The villains were just misunderstood, except for the villain players, not counting himself, who were just pansies. The real villain was the government all along, but nobody knows that except everyone. The RP at the least was good, up to a point. The RP with each other, at the very least, villains and heroes alike. Up until TG started to get in the middle of our conversations with NPCs, from psionics to horny nurses to his own character. It became so tedious that Deer, the other DM, got fed up and left, taking the villain group and plot with her. Which was an issue unto itself that I failed to realize till later. Having had enough, both me and PD also left. Wolf left too because he was asked to by Deer. As horrible as this campaign was, it gets worse. Before I tell you about Deer's campaign, I need to give you some insight/hindsight on Deer herself. TLDR. That guy continues to be a that guy as a DM. Players leave into what will be known as hell for most. It is always sad to hear worlds with great concepts and potential crashing down like this. And listen, I am of the belief that the NPCs can work. but I'd also say the DM should only have one DMPC and, well, not have them be like this. Overpowered, berating the party, and just being a power trip for the DM. There seem to be some redeeming qualities to this. Sad world and the RP between players working well. But if those are the only things keeping you, then it's bound to fail sooner or later, especially with the displayed negative qualities of the game. This was only part 2 of 4, however. And now we get to the not safe for work area. Mutants and Megamistakes, Volume 3. The good, the bad, and the kinky? Deer was the second DM in TG's game. I didn't find this out till later, but TG handles the world and the evil government plots and such. Deer handled most of the story and RP. She DM'd for the villains and played as a hero. Deer played a very Starfire-like bug girl character. She was naive and kind, and also from under Mexico, which had been nuked years ago unbeknownst to the world. Our first few sessions with her weren't too bad. Normally we go on a mission and get berated. One of the training missions got weird with TG using a simulation of a villain NPC to fight us, which got pretty weird and making inappropriate comments about Deer's character's thighs. When we expressed disgust, he tried a bit too hard to argue his villain character's morals. It wasn't till about after the third session that things went downhill in a sense. We went to the neutral bar as a party, which is a channel in the server where both heroes and villains can drink without worry of killing each other. While there, Blue's character tried and failed to flirt with Deer's character. Lizard's character then came in and slithered, pun intended, into her heart. In-game, the characters started dating, and while that was fine at first, it started to take up most of the plot of the campaign. The story began to wrap around Deer's character, her character's family and country, and her love triangle. The love triangle was weird even before hindsight. Maybe I'm just a prude, but it just felt a little fetishy. Basically, Deer's character's race was all part animals or bugs. Each one has a word they can say to turn them into a feral slave. Feral as in, like, a dog. Which doesn't make sense for a bug girl, but I digress. Oh, and also she went into heat for some reason. Or at least I think it was heat. She described having hearts in her eyes and panting like a dog and wagging her ass in the air. For whatever reason, Deer's character's sister used this word on Deer's character and left in a room with Rabbit's character, who is a swamp man beast person. This led to a very, not fully consensual relationship between those two. Lizard's character eventually found out about this and started his character's redemption arc, trying to get both the villain players and hero players to help her via killing her family and ending the curse. This became the goal. Whilst playing, we were allowed second characters, which led to Wolf and Deer's second characters. A couple. One a teen wolf, the other a spirit medium. They were inconsequential in this part of the story. Although, looking back, this did make it seem like she was trying to get every player in an in-game relationship in some way, shape, or form. This thought became more prevalent when, in the middle of an encounter against Deer's character's family, a female NPC charmed my character into a portal and disappeared with him. The party, of course, made a bunch of death by snoo-snoo jokes. Upon the NPC uncharming him, he was basically forced to take her on dates or be forced to stay in the pocket dimension till he starved to death. She played the girlfriend NPC from PD's backstory. She also had an NPC that was supposed to be a hero, but went into the neutral bar and actively had sex with villains till their souls were literally sucked from their body. No, She wasn't a succubus. In hindsight, the game became a telenovela, or was at least divulging into one. I guess I overlooked this because it was TG's game and I assumed he was the main problem. But it was both of them, and despite how much of a problem the campaign was with them together, Deer's campaign alone would probably be the worst campaign I've ever played. TLDR, red flags I missed along the way. And here I am thinking I will get used to reading this sort of thing, but my god, that's just... Okay, have your kinks and fetishes. I do not care what you do behind closed doors as long as it doesn't harm anyone. But the second you bring this disgusting behavior to the table, you're making it everyone's business. I do not know where people get the idea that this sort of thing is, in the slightest, acceptable to do. You're just making everyone immensely uncomfortable and not making them want to play with you ever again. And that all is aside from making one character feel like the main character, which is a whole other can of worms. Everybody has their moments where the spotlight is on them, but no character should ever feel like the main character and the only real driving force behind the story. The entire group are your main characters, not only your personal favorite. Well, we're almost done. Here comes the last part. Mutants and Mega Mistakes. Volume 4. A fetishy finale. Last part of this 4-parter. The last one was a bit fluffier than people wanted, so I want to apologize real quick before I continue. I thought maybe I should give context, and I guess I was giving too much. Short recap. So me and everyone else met Deer through a short-lived Heroes vs. Villains campaign. When there was a fallout between her and the other DM, we all migrated over to her server. The game Deer had originally pitched to us was essentially a different flavor of Suicide Squad. We were all brought in by the government and forced on missions for committing one crime or another. PD played a slightly edgier version of their last character. Lizard, Blue, and Wolf just migrated their last characters over. Rabbit and me both made new characters from scratch. Rabbit was a DJ vampire, I made a technopath. It was another play-by-post, with actual play every weekend. At first, it seemed like we'd be getting a decent story and decent crew of characters. Then, a week passed, and things quickly derailed. The campaign quickly went to just her airing out her fetishes onto the rest of us. Half of the group was fine with it for the most part, but the other half not so much. Especially not being told beforehand that this was what it actually was going to be. The telenovela that I had attributed to TG from the last campaign machination followed us. It was revealed over a course of about 2 weeks. Deer's Mothgirl character and Lizard's character, as well as Blue's character, have been reliving their lives through multiple universes. Deer's Mothgirl, for whatever reason, had an evil version of herself that would reset everything through time shenanigans. This led to a love triangle between Blue, Lizard, and Deer's characters. That involved a lot of will they, won't they, and time-traveling children, which Deer seemed to love using to push more novella plots, or just to have around. Between everyone, there were about 50 or so children from the future that would come in and either hang out or warn us about their evil future mother. On top of that, things got explicit very fast. As real play became less and less and play-by-post took over, Deer tried and nearly succeeded pairing up all of her NPCs, all female, with a player. According to one of them, "We aren't here to be heroes. We're here to be their little playthings." The NPCs would openly flirt with any character who wasn't already getting fucked by someone else or ask for a threesome. Most of these scenes were played in DMs, but as far as I'm aware, there was never a fade to black. She always went into detail. one of the many things that left a bad taste in my mouth the most, Wolf's character, literally just a teen werewolf, and Deer's NPC who was dating Wolf's character, and apparently had daddy issues, both went to go visit Wolf's character's dad. Wolf left them in a room together, and long story short, because of her daddy issues, she fucked his dad, and it was heard over the intercom. As revenge, and to determine that he was in charge, his character turned the intercoms back on and fucked them so that everyone would know they were the dominant one. I myself had my character flirted with several times, but the character I had made was apathetic, aromantic, and asexual. His goal before being captured was to turn the world into robots. Because he prefers technology, because he can understand tech better. She seemed to get upset with that and tried to make a robot girl NPC to entice him. That didn't go anywhere. PD had to deal with any story he had planned being threatened and more or less ripped away. His character had a girlfriend in their backstory who the head NPC that had taken him in as a lover decided that if she ever found out, she would kill her. When it was found out the robot NPC was made for me was just a part of the lead NPC, his character just started getting fought over. He was very uncomfortable, especially since out of game he was still in high school and in game he was barely 18. This only got worse. PD's character got his powers from a demon. Like the Hulk, occasionally that demon would take control. In an RP moment, his character went to Rabbit's DJ vampire for help. Rabbit pulled out the demon soul and told PD to come back later. This led to a graphic scene from Rabbit where they rape what is essentially part of another player's character so hard that in their own words, they switch genders. Rabbit continues for the better part of an hour typing out an unneeded rape scene. Needless to say, PD was horrified when they returned to the server the next day. The whole server became just a big orgy between everyone's characters. I don't honestly know why I stayed as long as I did. I just kind of muted the server and stopped being active using the excuse of college to avoid the chaos. Deer's husband hopped onto the server later, dragging everyone into his own campaign and leaving the server dead until it was eventually deleted. Mutant and Mastermind since then has been a sore subject and kind of a curse. While nothing has been as bad as the first 3 campaigns I joined, whenever I do join a Mutants and Masterminds campaign, it always ends poorly. TLDR, female DM openly displays her kinks and fetishes and turns her at first thought to be normal campaign into an endless orgy party. Ew, gross, disgusting. Why do people do this? I can only repeat my previous points. Why not leave? And why the hell would you display your kinks and fetishes like this? To get into my first point a little further, because I know oftentimes the reason people stay in bad games like these are because they've been friends with the other people in the game. And leaving, to them, would mean potentially breaking off your year-long friendships or damaging them. But in this case, the author had no prior connection to the other players as far as I could tell. Again, I am obviously not blaming them for the things that happened, and they do even ask themselves why they stayed for as long as they did. But not once had they talked about their problems with the others, or actually left after this many upsetting occurrences. I hope that maybe they, too, have learned from the experience at the very least, and are able to notice red flags much quicker and call them out. Not to even speak of those who were the actual cause of them. But that was it for today's story. I hope you enjoyed your stay, and that I will see you again soon. For there are always more stories to be shared.